Hello and welcome to Castles and Legends. Today we are off to Chambercombe Manor, which has been described as the most haunted place in Devon and even one of the most haunted in Britain. It certainly has a long and sometimes checkered past. Many paranormal researchers have visited it, and it has been featured on the popular television show Most Haunted. Our visit here was in the middle of August 2022. Although it was a rather rainy day, the sun still shone, and from first impressions it was a rather delightful looking dwelling. No bad vibes were felt. A quick overview of the history? Well, Chambercombe Manor was once a rather grand manor house, nestled away in a valley in North Devon, close to Ilfracombe. The exact date it was built is unknown, but it is thought to have been first constructed in the 11th century and was mentioned in the Domesday Book of 1086. In 1162, the manor was owned by Sir Henry Chambercombe and remained of the Chambercombe family until the 15th century. In 1530, Chambercombe Manor was in the hands of Henry Grey, Duke of Suffolk, the father of the ill-fated Lady Jane Grey. Following his execution for treason, it passed to the Crown briefly. Over the following centuries, the manor lost its prestige. Exactly when is unknown, but eventually it became a farmhouse, and much of its interior still retains its former grandeur, and thanks to a dedicated trust, much has been restored. In the Chippendale room we see here, it is said it is haunted by the ghost of a 6-year-old girl, and when she is near, you can usually smell a rather lovely perfume. Although not all our ghostly residents are quite so sweet and friendly. In 1738, the manor was owned by Jan By, who was busy attempting to refurbish the dilapidated property. Whilst Jan was carrying out these repairs, he came across the outline of a window he had not noticed before. Inside the manor, Jan realised the walls and rooms along the corridor were not quite right. There was something hidden in between. He got his pickaxe and knocked through the wall. What Jan and his wife discovered horrified them. There was a little concealed room, and in the corner stood a small bed draped in tapestries. Upon that bed lay the skeletal remains of a woman still fully clothed in a fine dress. Who was this fine woman? Well, we have to go a bit further back to discover her identity. In the 17th century, an Alexander Oatway had resided at Chambercombe Manor. He was a well-known local wrecker. In the dark of night, when ships were struggling to find a safe harbour, Alexander and his villainous comrades would shine lights to lure them into the treacherous rocks, then murder any survivors and plunder the ship's cargo. Alexander's son, William, was said to be more kind, and when he accidentally discovered his father's trade, he rescued a young Spanish woman, Ellen, who he went on to marry, and they had one child, a baby girl named Kate. Kate grew up to be a fine young lady. At 16, her eye was caught by a visiting Irish naval officer, Duncan Wallace. Kate's parents approved of the match, and soon Kate and Duncan were wed, and she migrated to Dublin to be with her husband. In time, William inherited Chambercombe Manor, but the repair and maintenance costs, and not to mention his father's gambling debts, were beyond what he could afford, and slowly he followed into his father's footsteps into wrecking to fund the manor and the debts. On a stormy night in 1695, a ship came into the midst of Chambercombe Manor. William and his men set out on another dastardly wrecking mission. Just as William was about to leave the carnage, he spotted a bundle of clothing washing to and fro among the debris. William grabbed the clothing and turned it over. It was in fact a woman, horrifically disfigured and injured from what she had endured. Her face indistinguishable, but upon her finger glinted jewelled rings that could not be pulled off due to the swelling. William scooped the almost lifeless woman up and carried her home, although not from a wish to help her, but he wanted those jewels that she wore. Upon returning home, William's wife Ellen was horrified and did all she could to save the poor woman, but to no avail. Her injuries were too severe. The latest shipwreck became the talk of the town, and in a local tavern, William overheard some sailors chatting that had survived the wreckage. The sailors spoke of their captain, Duncan Wallace. William was alarmed. His daughter Kate had married a Duncan Wallace, so he pressed the sailors for some more information. It was indeed the same Duncan Wallace she had married, and what more, she had been aboard, on her way to visit relatives, and no trace had been found of her amongst the wreckage. Slowly, it dawned upon William. The disfigured woman he brought back to his home to steal her jewels had been his only child, Kate. The horrifying news was too much for William's wife Ellen. She died soon afterwards of a broken heart. The room containing Kate's body was sealed up and William moved away. The room remained hidden until Janvi accidentally discovered it. He took her remains and buried them beside her mother's grave, although, it is said, her ghost haunts Chambercombe Manor to this day.